Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the ISID Research Seminar Series. I can see our presenters and discussants if they could turn their audios and videos on for a moment. Hello, Professor Maiti. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, you are muted. In case you're talking, we can't hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you well. We also have our three speakers with us. Professor Maiti, I am not able to see Mr. Naveen Kumar. So
Naveen Kumar actually has gone out of city, and you know that this is the festival week, and he texts me that his network is extremely weak. He cannot join. I mean, as soon as he get the better connection, we'll be able to join.
No problems. That means we can start right away.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So we start the session, and very good afternoon to everybody once again. Today's session, we have a presentation on climate change and its impact on total factor productivity. It's a presentation by Professor Debendu Maiti and Mr. Naveen Kumar, who have jointly worked on this research area. We have followed this. Following this, we have three discussants on today's paper, which is the first one is Professor Bala Subramaniam, followed by Dr. Chandrasekhar Bahinipati and Dr. R. Rijesh. So without further ado, I think we can start with the presentation. Just a line of introduction for Professor Debendu Maiti. He comes from Delhi School of Economics. He's a professor. So, sir, is it all right if we have about 35 minutes for your presentation? Is that all right with you?
Yeah, perfectly fine. I think
So
I need to also give sufficient time to other speakers,
that will be
to
a
give feedback and.
So we have the time plan is as follows. We have about 30 minutes, 35 minutes for the presentation, which will be followed by about 12 minutes of three discussants, each 12 minutes each. And then that leaves us with about 12 to 14 minutes of open floor discussion. So, sir, you may please take the floor.
So let me first thank you being coordinating the session, and also kind introduction, as well as I need to also thank ISID giving me opportunity to present this paper, which has just published in LCBAT journal. I'll try to restrict my presentation to 30 minutes. If I'm extending, please just knock me. I mean, I don't feel free to also raise any clarification questions. If any of you have, I'll try to take them. But if you have any substantive comment, you can always hold back and pass on to me after the presentation. Okay, let me share my screen. Is this visible?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, okay. So this is the title which has been there in the paper. So I'm using this title only, and just got appeared, which is publicly available in the journal website. If you want to see the paper and go on to go detail of the paper, always visit the journal website. So now all we know that the surface temperature has been rising, which is definitely triggered by the carbon emissions. And we have also seen how the pandemic, which might be due to, let's say, some kind of adverse impact of the environmental consequences, has made our life miserable. And so that's also the reason why the type and life quality and livelihood became extremely difficult. Now, now when we are experiencing this set of natural calamities in whatever way we are actually experiencing, now you see, sorry. Now there have been number of international congress or international stakeholder initiate the discussions at least last 20 to 30 years, forcing this kind of environmental impact, trying to force the national government to adapt the measures, particularly for mitigating or adapting strategies to improve the environment. But you all know that this hasn't been quite effective. There has been no clear consensus coming up to be given a set of suggestions to be followed by the states. Specifically, um, if I consider only on the developing economy or the emerging economy, of course we know that during last two to 3 years, these economies have been actually growing fast. And growing fast means they have been also emitting to some extent to the environment. Now, whenever the discussions appears, one side of uh, you know remark coming up from the developing economy that this is our time to grow, and we don't have definitely capital to invest for better environment. And that's the reason why because we have definitely bigger development challenges. Let's say poverty is there, inequality is there, some sectors are not growing. These are definitely challenges for the humanities. In order to give priority to them, we try to focus the strategies by which the economy can actually grow, sometimes ignoring the environmental issues. The main message of the paper is that what I'm going to convey from here, that if you ignore the environmental consequences, you cannot even sustain the growth. So that means even if you think that you are trying to tackle the poverty, inequality, all sorts of development problems by enhancing economic growth, if you think that the growth can actually address this kind of problem, but you cannot actually grow ignoring that. So that means developing economy must adapt some kind of mitigation strategies, and the channels by which the growth can be arrested has been basically exposed here in this paper. There has been number of micro studies which has shown various kind of impact of the environmental consequences on the health, um, you know, land quality, agricultural productivity, some industrial productivities. These are all there. But we wanted to show there is an aggregate effect on the macroeconomy because the TFP will be dampened. And TFP, which is actually instrumental uh, factors boosting the economic growth, which cannot be grown because of the three factors. That's what we explicitly show in the paper. First, that the labor productivity, let's say if you consider any kind of production functions where the labor and capital are the main input, your efficiency of the labor would actually grow, would fall gradually because of the temperature rise. Simple example that those who work and go to the field, agricultural field, cannot work efficiently under heating. So of course the efficiency of the labor would actually fall. Similarly, with the high temperature, machine which is being performed here cannot actually function effectively. You all see, particularly during the summers in Delhi, that your AC doesn't work properly. Some of the machine doesn't work properly. So these are the things also be happening for the capital goods. And on the other hand, ecological service, which gives actually better externalities, positive externalities to improve our health status, our efficiency, and as well as that if let's say ecological services, ecological domain are being deteriorated, then government need to draw or divert the resources, R&D resources from somewhere else to preserve ecology, so that the R&D which was promoting, let's say, industrial sectors are also be arrested. So these are the three channels by which we are trying to show that TFP at the country level, I'm talking only the aggregate at the country level, can actually be dampened. And that will definitely dampen the productivity growth. So what are the main contributions of the people? There are three contributions we are actually trying to. This is first, we conceptually tried to show that how three components of the productivity can affect TFPG. This is conceptual as you can, and more specifically, capital productivity or efficiency of the capital can also deteriorate or fall. That hasn't been there in the literature so far, at least in the macro literature. Second thing is that the three sources that we've taught conceptually has been decomposed. So that decompositions technique that has been directly from the conventional growth model, which I would say, and you have to do that. Most of the studies, when they've worked on the developing economy, they have taken temperature has been used as a proxy for the climate change, which has been considered as an exogenous variable. Now, when I'm trying to address this issue for a group of emerging countries, that cannot be endogenous in that case. Sorry, that cannot be exogenous. It should be considered an endogenous. So endogeneity has been actually established theoretically also in this literature. I'll come to this point later on. And third, which is, I would say, the methodological improvement that we have done this year. When you're trying to show the impact of the climate change on the productivity, now mostly econometrically fixed effect model, ARDL model, country specific model has been actually used, but they have probably ignored to some extent the interdependency of the climate change effects between the country. Let's say if my country is actually increasing emissions, as a result, the temperature might be rising, and similarly, let's say Bangladesh, which is nearer to, may not be contributing, but they would be also affected because of some kind of collinearity in the error term. So that means error term are to some extent correlated, which cannot be captured in a set of variables. So this cross-sectional dependence, even in the time series model, are being ignored when particularly the effect of the temperature on TFPG has been estimated. So, and then we say that this is a serious methodological issue. So we thought we should actually try to rectify that, and for that we tried to adopt some kind of CSARDL model to our best evaluative understanding. Said this is the best model we could actually apply here to avoid this kind of issues, and then we found the results, and the results, which is much different from the existing. I'll come to this results in a couple of minutes. Okay, now this is the temperature rising happening taking last, little more than 100 years, I would say. The temperature has started shooting up, 60s onward, but if you see, and mainly started shooting up from 80s onwards. So this is one point I'm trying to. This is also only for the emerging country, definitely. Now, if you also see the productivity, total factor productivity, see, in this paper, we haven't measured the total factor productivity. We have only taken the established estimates that is there in the sprint data table that has been taken. And if you simply plot them, you see the most of the countries has been experiencing the drop of the productivity. More or less, this is that. Of course, there has been ups and downs, but in general, there has been declining trend. Now, this also shows that who are the vulnerable to the climate change. Now, deeper the color, higher is the vulnerability. You see, the most of the developing countries are much more vulnerable. These are the countries that are much more vulnerable. Now, I don't want to go to that for the interest of the time. I simply mentioned that there has been a number of interesting papers appeared now to see the effect of the climate change on the TPG, and they have looked at some of the channels and agriculture industry something, but the methodological issue that I've already told are being ignored to some extent. So what we have done, we simply use the Ramsey model to accommodate the three channels which could actually dampen the TFP. So that has been done. Second thing is that this, to overcome this methodology, we use CSARDL model to overcome that. Okay. Now, okay, I don't want to go into technicalities of the model, but I'll simply describe what is there mathematically, non-technically. Now, suppose there are number of countries in the world, and each of them producing one variety of intermediate good. Now, these varieties, there are in countries. These varieties are combined to get the final good, say Y. Okay, and then the Y. So now let's say when one countries are emitting, to produce manufacturing good, may be committing little emission, which may not have much impact on the global climate. But when they together is committing same thing, same amount, there will be multiplier effect while these final goods are being produced. And then so along with this final production, there is a level of emissions which will be coming. That emissions will have an impact on the global temperature. That global temperatures will enter into the production function of X country level production functions, where your A is, let's say, simply if you consider two factor production, your efficiency of capital, your efficiency of labor, as well as, let's say, if you can define this as an externality of ecology, these three would be affected. This T is actually entering here, affecting the efficiency terms. And if you just rewrite this production function, combine these A term together, that will give the level of productivity. Now, so the point again, so one country emission may not actually have impact, but when all the countries are producing, there is a bigger impact, and that is affecting global carbon emissions, and that affect the temperature and temperature. So that's why the model has been endogenous to some extent in our model. This is the country level production I've said on manufactured goods are producing combining to final goods. Now here you look at that. Even if you assume that the countries are homogeneous, producing the same amount of good each period. Now, see, this is the externality that is being created. To produce this amount of this is the final good, I said. Now, each countries are producing this amount of good. So now this part is always greater than 1. So that means to produce for 1 unit of intermediate to produce at the country level, final good has an externality, positive externality. So that means positive externality is actually coming in the final production. Now, when the final production, if this also carries the carbon, so carbon could also be produced in a magnified way. So that has been captured. This is the emission function we assume. So global production would emit, and that global production enter in the temperature function. That temperature function has been given. These temperature functions will appear here in these three terms. Efficiency terms. Now, then we specified these functions, the damage functions here. Now you can clearly see these terms are together we are calling TFP. Now you see that since this TFP depends on temperature T, capital T, So that means these definitely depend on temperature. Now we'd like to decompose the temperature part and other part. Now to do that, let's say because of the presence of capital T, your ecology will be damaged by certain rate, which is mu a. Similarly, your capital will also be damaged at some rate mu k. This is your labor productivity also damaged. So I also forgot to tell one thing that when we also specify the emission function, we assume that this is theta is the elasticity of emission. So means 1% increase in final good output, how much emission is being emitted to the environment, theta actually captures. So now for positive level of theta, so after substituting everything, and then we in the production function. Now see, this is the production function we capture now. Now see, these are the main input. Now these main input staying, and these are the these terms are capturing TFP. Now see. So these together, since these are the main inputs of the production function, this follows CRS because alpha plus 1 plus alpha 1 alpha is 1. So that means this is CRS, constant return to scales. And that gives you the moment we replace this term, because y have also appears here, and rearrange that term, you get this production function. Now since these are the main two inputs, now if you add the power term, and this is the some of those are less than 1. So that means this is the decreasing return to scale or diminishing return scale. So same production, because of the presence of omega, this omega actually captures damage. Now if any of these parameters are positive, this is the pollution elasticity, emission elasticity, these are the damage, ecological damage part, this is the capital damage part, this is labor damage part, and that captures together the omega. Omega actually capturing the damage. Because of that, these particular production functions become diminishing return to scales. Now, if let's say omega is 0, now you can show this will be converted into the conventional demand production functions. So, and now what we have done simply, then we have calculated the TFP from here, and then we also get the TFP when the damage is 0, and then we try to show the differences. That differences has been actually shown here. Yeah. Now this is then that actually give you the gap of the TFPG in two countries. Now see, first part, it captures D part, and D is also capturing omega. Now second part also captures omega. Third part is also capturing. Second part capturing L and omega. So that means this is the labor efficiency damaged taking place in the TFPG. So how much capital damage is causing to dampen the productivity, that has been captured here. How much ecology is being damaged, that has been captured by this term together. Now see, if you consider again in this production, in this equation, gamma is 0, then you will get total factor productivity gap would be 0. So that means there will be no gap between these. Now all the three components also can contain the negative term. So that means the TFP in presence of positive omega, TFPG is lower. So that's basically the theory, and which is quite simple, and I don't want to go there. If there is any clarification, we can. Now I'll come to the result part mainly. So I have taken mostly the standard data from the World Bank and others. I don't want to go to that. And these are the standard unit rate test has been done, to run the CSDS model. Now this is the mean. So mean temperature at the country level has been used as the proxy for the climate change, and that has been regressed on the TFPG. Now this is the coefficient that tells you that 1 degree rise of the temperature is going to dampen the productivity by 3.22%. So this is the main result, I would say. So that means now in the existing literature so far we found some study, let's say Kumar and others, and Deer and others, they found similar kind of. So they said that 1.5% dampening of the productivity. Now we found much higher, and we are claiming this is because we actually eliminated the cross-sectional dependence from the error term when we are actually regressing uh, on productivity. So because of that bias, the result was bit moderate, but our result is little bit high since we are able to eliminate those kind of. Now then, whether our results are significant enough or not, we need to test that. As a result, we tried to bring number of control variable to see whether the main variables are still significant or not. See, everywhere see main variable are significant, and which is approximately about 3.5%. Now, and then another thing. So we know that we have taken 21 emerging countries. Mm, can anyone confirm whether I'm audible or not? Maybe internet can actually be dropped
Yes,
between.
you've been heard all through.
Okay, that's fine. Now, so 21 countries are there. Now we can also say that all the 20 countries are not located in the same climatic zone. Now let's say we are in the tropical zone. So let's say 1 degree rise of the temperature may have greater impact on our economy. But there are countries, let's say in South, I would say South Africa, or maybe some Latin American countries, developing countries who are in the south zone, are their average temperature, let's say, less than 20 degrees. Now, so they may not be having similar impact. So that's the reason we tried to see whether there has been heterogeneous impact across the temperature level. So what we have done, we have actually divided the countries into three zones. One, the cold is 0 to 10 degree, moderate 10 to 20, and the very as 20 to 30 and 40. Average, of course, in average temperature. Now, what we have found, when you have regressed only for the cold zone, this is the impact we got. So there may 2.73% dampening effect. Now, when you have taken the moderate zone, and this is the impact, which is little bit lower than that. Now, when you have high temperature zone, again impact is high. So that what we are claiming all through, if this is, let's say, your 0 TPG, so the impact is like that. So that means these extreme climatic zones are supposed to experience the greater damage compared to the moderate climatic zones. That's basically, and this is more or less consistent also there. But only difference is that when some of the studies were done, let's say for 54 countries, they found this kind of impact. So that means some country may get the positive effect of the TFPG. So that was not seen in our result. And now, in order to also verify whether our results is right or not, then what we have done, we had taken two type of variables in the. So from the average temperature, actual temperature, average temperatures in the regions, we have taken some countries are relatively high, having high temperature, some countries have relatively low. And then for the higher countries, we get the negative temperature. So that means their differences is from the mean are negative. Some who are in the higher temperature, their difference is positive. Now, what is expected that the countries who is showing the negative temperature from the mean are supposed to get the positive effect. That is also reflected here. And some countries who are already higher than the average are supposed to get the negative effect. That is also found. And then you have to see whether these kind of relations are coming or not. This is also being there. So temperature coefficient is positive and the quadratic term is negative. That also confirms. Now there are others. We talked about the channels. Now labor productivity, C negative. Capital productivity, negative. I mean, there are other measures which are also taken here. Check the robustness. These are all negative. And another way, capital productivities are also found to be negative. Now, this is what we are saying is that the forest covers are negative. So this is also to some extent true. Now whether the all the sectors that exist in these economies are also having negative impact. Overall, manufacturing sectors are going to get the negative effect. Agriculture sector, negative effect. Natural resource rent, which is supposed to be positive. Now this is quite interesting. Now when the natural rate resource is supposed to be rising, if natural resources are declining, then the rent of the natural resource is supposed to go. Since it is declining, so that's the natural resource rent are actually rising. So this is also consistent based on the theory. And this is another way to see the cereal price, cereal yield are supposed to be also having negative impact, which also show that the agriculture is going to be much more severely affected. And I think there are also results. I forgot to bring that. No, we also saw that some countries which are less developed country, they are getting bigger impact. Now, so I am maybe 5 more minutes. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. You're very much within time. It's all right, sir.
Okay. Now see, so this much of effect would be seen. So what we have showed so far that emerging countries, all the countries, there could be heterogeneous impact, but there will be negative impact. And we managed to also show that the relatively less developed countries who heavily depend on the agriculture, since agriculture will be much more vulnerable, so they are supposed to be extremely vulnerable situations. Their impact would be greater. Now of course they adopt some kind of adaptive strategies or mitigation strategies required. As I said in the beginning, most of the countries are discussing to bring some kind of changes so that the environment is likely to be improved, and it's supposed to have some impact. And then we want to see whether that has made any impact so far. In reality, we try to check in this exercise. What we have done here, the same CSARDL model has been run, dropping 1 year by each time. So let's say when you have run, plot the coefficient here, taking entire pool, then you have dropped 1990. Then we got the coefficient plotted here. Then you have taken another year. So we dropped year gradually 1 by 1 and got the coefficient. To see, so that what does it mean? It means that in the later period, since some kind of adaptive measures has been taken up, as a result, we should get the moderate effect on the TFPC damage. So we have seen some changes, but if you just look at the entire period, this is the entire period, the coefficient hasn't been significantly changed, which is still lower than, which is negative. So that means, so from here, developing economy, whatever measure has been made so far to the during last 2 and 3 decades, I would say, hasn't been so far effective to improve the productivity in those economies. Now then, what could be the impact if we consider several scenarios? Now the scenarios actually has been done these ways. Now let's say most of the countries, basically after the pandemic, has been quite proactive to bring some strategies to reduce their carbon emissions. and action has been made. Now, some countries has targeted 2015, some countries have targeted 2070 to make zero carbon emissions within this period. Now, then, of course, we know that even government commits something, there will differential level of implementation in this case. Now, if I see different level of implementation is taking place at the country level, some of the universities, let's say University of East Anglia, they have come up with the trained, projected based on the scientific experimented, said that if, let's say, the country do not do anything, let it go what is being seen now in the environment, so the temperature would actually would shoot up, and the red line is showing this is the way the temperature would rise. Temperature will rise 2 to 4, sorry, at least 4 degrees by end of this century. Now, if you are moderately playing, then temperature would like that. Moderate, and so far the kind of strategies has been adapted and has been consensus in the Paris conventions, and there later on countries has been declared. If those policies are strictly being implemented, this scenario these are the RCP scenario, RC 2.6 RCP. So that means this scenario will be, in this scenario, you see the temperature may, after some times, particularly after 40 and 50, may gradually started to fall. Whereas in other cases, intermediate cases, it may still continue to go up, but stabilize at some point of time. So these are the extreme cases. RCP 2.6, which are desirable, that has been calculated based on the country strategies has been adapted so far. If this continues, temperature would be stabilized, and I think we'll be able to reduce temperature at least by 1 degree by the end of the century. Whereas if we don't, then the temperature may actually go 2 to 4 degree by the end of this century. Now, if that continues, since these data are not drawn by R, I mean, we haven't calculated these data. These data has been taken by East Anglia University. They have their scientific department to project this temperature. Now, if this continue, now we have already calculated the total factor productivity. Now, if you try to project what could be the total productivity dampen by the end of the century, this is. So that means if business as usual continues, and this would be the productivity damage taking place. Now, if stringent adaptive measures have been taken, then I think after 2050, we may say that we'll come back to the at least the current level of productivity, and then gradually we can improve and get the positive productivity by the end of this century. This is, and then we have also projected for all the countries that are there in the study. We have seen if business as usual conditions remain, see everywhere, see the productivity. If low carbon emissions, so that means if carbon emissions has been reduced based on the strategies has been discussed by the countries or promised to be adopted, then productivity would start shooting up for all the countries. Now, if not, then productivity would be declining in all the countries. This is what has been done. Now, just I'll take 2 more minutes. So we have also done similar kind of analysis for Indian economy, but these are not there in the paper. But since there would be broader interest to know what is happening in there, but this is basically the other work that we are doing with Naveen. Now, there we also found what would be the growth. So I said that the temperature affect TFP affect growth. Now, so then another round of estimation has been done here for the country, and we use the state level data and use almost same method. Now we said if this continue, growth on an average would be dropped by 2.35%. Okay, and negative figure would also be seen across all the seasons. Now, if we take this measure and also plot the similar kind of scenarios, then you see, yeah, here. Now see, and RCP scenarios, see if low carbon emissions, or let's say the way the countries has committed, if that is being implemented, will the productivity damage would continue up to 2040, and then growth damage, but growth would start will be the gap between that projected growth and others will fall gradually. So that means we'll maintain. On the other hand, if a business as usual situation continues, productivity loss would gradually shoot up by 2.35%, I said, annually, and would be much higher by the end of this century. Okay, so this is probably, I think I should stop now.
Thank you, Professor Maiti, for presenting your and Mr. Naveen Kumar's work with us. It was a very interesting presentation, and with your views on total factor productivity, how does it get impacted due to changes in climate, due to climate changes, is very insightful. As I move into the round for discussion, I would like to first invite Dr. Chandrasekhar Pahinipati, because he has an engagement at 4:30, so he's requested to make his discussion points first. So, Mr. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Chandrasekhar, could you please make your comments?
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'd like to congratulate Professor Maiti and also student to publish a paper, because as he also mentioned, also in the paper, earlier paper looked at the, suppose in case of India, the Professor Somanathan paper looked at the temperature with the productivity, and other papers also looked at. But anyway, he has considered the three kinds of productivity, that's labor productivity and capital and ecological services. So I have a question here, that in case of the ecological service, because we have seen that, okay, most of the studies might not have considered the ecological services, because getting the information or the data is quite difficult as well as challenging. In case of ecological services, so one place I have seen that, okay, you have taken the forest cover, that as a kind of proxy for the ecological services, and another place I have seen that you have taken the natural resource rent. Okay, the natural resource rent, I just want to curious to know that, so where basically you got the information that, okay, there's a estimation that, okay, what is the rent for the natural resources for the country wise for different time periods, and also the whether the forest cover can be considered as one of the proxy for the entire ecosystem, because there may not be loss of forest cover related to temperature rise, or because may not be, because sometimes suppose you think of the mangrove forest, which act as a barrier to the cyclonic impact. Okay, because temperature rising linked to cyclone, and mangrove considered as a barrier, so we are basically increasing the coastal areas, basically more forest cover, so that there will be less impact. Okay, so in that case, whether forest cover could be a good proxy for the ecosystem survey, that basically I'm curious to know that in the with respect to the ecological service. And the second thing, I was having a little bit doubt. I just want to clarify with you, because one point is said that, okay, the earlier literatures basically taking temperature as exogenous, and you consider them as the endogenous variable, and you link that to the emission of the greenhouse gases. But in a like regression, I've never seen that, okay, where the emission values are figured out. But my question is that the temperature rise is may not depend on the flow of the emissions, because yes, the emerging economies are basically having the largest share in the flow, some visible share in the flow. But if we look at the stock, the emerging economies, the currently measuring emerging economies may not have a visible share, or the developed country could have the visible share in the case of the stock. So because the current rise in temperatures, okay, so it depends on both the stock and flow. Okay, so if you consider only the flow side, so what about the stock? The basically the stock was emitted long year ago, because that has a impact on the emission of the that's an impact on the temperature rise. Okay, and the third point I would like to point out, since also yes, you have given the different scenarios with respect to RCP, which I can understand, but so how you put the adaptation there? Okay, because see, one point you told, okay, suppose the countries do something, there's a declining of emissions because the mitigation measures. Okay, the RCP scenarios is basically the mitigation measures. If the whole world is basically following the COP, basically following the Paris Convention, if the whole world is following the Paris Convention, so there will be a possible, because if I tell you that, okay, if 2, 3 years or 4 years before, we have a report published by the IPCC that basically 1.5 degrees temperature rise. Okay, that's IPCC special report. So we are basically targeting that, okay, by 2050 or 70 or maybe 2100, the temperature will rise 1.5 degrees, and let us see what kind of stringent measures we can take. Okay, so that by 2070 or 100, the temperature should rise by 1.5 degrees across the world. But now, I think 1 month ago, someone in some presentation, they mentioned that some IPCC lead author, that by 2035 we are going to reach 1.5 degree. Okay, no longer that 1.5 degrees below, because that by 2100 maybe more. So that basically kind of a mitigation scenario. And then given that mitigation scenario, so whatever the reduction comes with respect to mitigating, then basically your RCP works. But where you figure out the adaptation? Okay, because I know that's difficult to figure out the adaptation in the model, because whether there is an investment in adaptation, because you don't have information that, okay, where the adaptation is going, and where the investment comes from, and what are the activities are happening. Since actually that picture is not clear, I was very curious to know that, okay, how you're figuring out the adaptation measures there. So that's the question from my side. And anyway, I'd like to congratulate you, and happy to see that, okay, you have started working on the state level also.
Okay, so can I just quickly respond to that? I think otherwise I'll forget. I mean, just quickly
I have another question. Can I add that?
Yeah, please.
Actually, in case of agriculture sector, so I was curious to know that, okay, productivity. So which value you consider, the yield value? So which value actually you consider in case of agriculture sector?
Just I'll quickly answer. I will take just 2-3 minutes to respond. First, you said forest covers, ecological survey. This is a proxy. We don't have any, because we don't want to calculate any proxy, better proxy for ecological service. This is one way people have actually used. But forest cover also measure in terms of canopy density. Forest area might actually go up, canopy density may not also go up. So the canopy density was also being considered on the irrigations. This is one. So that's the reason. This is the best way I could actually, and the overall ecology actually depends on the forest, because an entire ecosystem depends on that. This is the best way to capture that. But of course, there are micro study may consider different way, but macro level we can actually consider this. And forest, rain, how do you talk about? This is inverse relationship. When rain goes up, so that means your quantity goes down. This is inverse relationship. We want to actually see whether that is also happening in reality or not. And these are basically some of the variables taken for robustness checking of the results. That's all. I mean, one way we taken rain, we have also taken corresponding. Simply said that forest cover may not be the right variable to capture the ecology. We pick other variables. This is second one, adaptation. You are right, but in macro, whatever technological changes is happening, it is supposed to be affecting your productivity. The way we conceptualize the macro model. Now it has to be reflected there in the productivity data. Now then the way we have calculated, we kept on dropping 1 year. Suppose if adaptation happened today, you may need to see some impact in the next year onward. Then happen next year, then you may actually see the effect next year. So we kept on dropping the regression and got the coefficient, and then you see whether the coefficient values has actually has improved or not. So there has been marginal improvement. This is one way to cross it. I mean, I don't want to go and whether particular farm has actually adapted or not. If one particular has made some adjustment, other 5 farm did not do that, then may not be any impact. Of course, this is some kind of adoption is happening, but it's not actually coming out as a macro impact as a whole. That is one of the things we wanted to show. And then again, we did not make any experiment to show what could be the climate change projection. There has been scientific. We wanted to get some data, continuous data, so that we could do some kind of projection. IPCC said that this might be the rise, but they did not give them a projected data at the country level. But we got from East Anglia. That's the reason why you may actually get the better data from somewhere else. And then again, for agriculture productivity, yield, 2-3 alternative measures were taken for the robustness. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Professor Maiti.
Okay, so I'll now invite our next discussant, Mr. Balasubramaniam, from iTech Bangalore.
Thank you, Madam. First, I would like to thank the presenter, Professor Dibyendu Maiti, for your excellent presentation, which I seen your paper received from the organization which they are actually conducting today. So I compliment you and your student. I have also the same kind of the questions. Before raising the questions, actually I have some positive observations, even because of whenever we start our the review or presentation, very well, there are positive observations, then some kind of the critical comments, which is how to improve. Because of this work already has published, good impact factor journal. That's the reason actually recognized by the the researcher and scholars. The first point actually, what is my first observation? Your paper actually is well written in the context of which actually we are facing climate change impact and the macroeconomic perspective, which actually a number of researchers already they proved actually for 1 degree Celsius, 1.5 degree, 2 degree, or 3 degree, 4 degrees. So Richard Toll from 1995 to 2023, number of work already they published. Most of the work actually they talk about the macroeconomic impact, but your work actually particularly the climate change, how impact on the total factor productivity, especially the temperature which you took actually. This is one of the additional literature in the area of climate change research. What actually I found in your paper, labor productivity, capital, including the ecological services, which actually we are working since last 10 years. I have some excellent, some good comments regarding on that. Already my friend Chandrasekhar, he given some kind of, the comments about the ecological services, whether the proxy for the forest cover. So the things I will come to later. So theoretically and empirically, you are well proved with the good, econometric aspects, which I read your paper, and you given 5 reasons why this work is very important, compared than earlier researchers like Somanathan work. Actually, he talked about the labor productivity and labor supply related to the temperature, and Richard Dole and later some other papers. But your paper actually, you talk about the exogenous, endogenous issues with the cross-sectional ARDL model for emerging market economy. The result also shows if 1 degree Celsius increase, the impact will come as 3.2% in terms of points in the context of total factor productivity. Then second, another aspect, among the countries you selected emerging market economy, South Africa and Brazil, they have the higher total factor productivity, and Thailand found is very low factor productivity, which is actually above the Indian GDP context, actually compared with India and other South Asian countries. So the main policy implication of your studies require more investment in the adaptation and mitigation strategy for avoiding the future vulnerability related to the climate change. So overall, your paper, your presentation, actually, I appreciate, and this is good additional literature. Now I come to the, my perception about the critical comments on your work, which you published and presented today. The conceptual framework, what you developed with capital and labor. So labor productivity and the capital along with the ecological services. Because of the ecological services, how we define, that is a basic thing by the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, people getting direct benefit from the nature. Classified by the United Nations Environmental Program and Robert Costanza, other leading ecological and environmental economists, as we know very well, there are 24 ecosystem services actually we are receiving from the nature. So among the 24 ecosystem services, there are data issues there. Among the 24 services, number of services are intangible, as you know very well. For example, carbon and water regulation, soil regulation, disease regulations. There is no value because of we talk about the positive externality and another side is a negative externality. So the question is here, how the climate change impact on the tangible and intangible ecosystem services. So how we actually, the climate change or temperature affect the total factor productivity because of you applied the global production function model, which is one of the recognized by the classical people, actually researcher. The production function, when we run the production function model, so the capital and labor, you talk about the capital, what type of capital actually we are considering here, produced capital, human capital, and natural capital. The question is here, how much natural capital we are considering in the economic picture? That is a basic question. So how the natural capital impact and due to the climate change, especially in your context, temperature. So this is actually very critical, issue actually what I found in your paper. So for example, the forest fire happened. So how the forest fire impact on the livelihood of the local communities? So that is also because of significant amount of communities, they are depending on the nature for their livelihood, income, and employment opportunities. So labor productivity is involving in the ecological services. So most of the tribal communities, they are working. So how we are looking in the because of this is a macroeconomic perspective. This is a good actually work we started now because of still there is a lot of time for updating the paper or additional work, publishing in another work also. That's the reason my comments on that. And ecological services, it is very important because of in the previous work, they are not considered about the ecological services. Only they talk about the labor productivity, whether it's agriculture or industries. So once you come to the ecological service, because of we have done recent research submitted to the government of Karnataka due to the forest fire and forest land converted to the non-forestry purpose. We took only the two important indicator, estimated ecological loss in terms of already those who are estimated ecosystem services value. So the problem is here, there is less market value for the ecosystem services. So how the less market value of ecosystem services considered as a proxy? So this is a very critical actually issue, which we discussed actually, fortunately, yesterday with Professor Costanza. I attended the meeting with Costanza. We actually discussing about this kind of issue. So the second aspect which I found in the presentation and the paper, we used of the social cost of carbon actually, So how you relate to the social cost of carbon in the total effort factor productivity? So which value we used? If you use means you can maybe a little bit of give more explanation because of Ricky et al. 2018. This is a basic work actually. From 1995 to till the date, a number of work actually they are updating about the social cost of carbon. So even Ministry of Forest and Environment actually recently the Natural Capital Accounting project, which is submitted to the UNEP, they consider his work only for $86 per ton of carbon emission. Then actually another question actually what I would like to ask, what are the technological factor actually included in the estimation because of economic factors are there, environmental factors are there. So I want to know something. Finally, what actually my no, basic discussion I want to ask with you, how the climate policies so enhance the total factor productivity, for example, small, medium, and large scale enterprises. So these are the things which is very, very critical. Now, actually, 1.1 degree Celsius come to the 1.5 degree Celsius. We are expecting 2 degrees Celsius and more. I mean, this is expected based on the projection by the IPCC various scenarios. So how actually policies they are looking for labor productivity or risk of the labor. So these are the issues are there, especially these kind of issues, increasing of decreasing of income and the distributional issue. Coming to the inequality perspective, this is a macroeconomic issues there. So the poverty and women, how they are impacted to these kind of issues and marginalized communities. This is socioeconomic issues are there. So finally, what actually I would like to mention here. So how climate policies strengthening the economy against the climate shocks. So these are the things actually I want to discuss with you. Now I am stop. If any further things comments we can discuss. Thank you, sir.
Professor Maite, do you want to respond to the comments now or after the third discussion? Sir, can't hear you. You have muted yourself.
No, it's up to you. I mean, since previous speaker wanted to leave, that's the reason I thought I should respond.
I'm staying here. I'll be staying here. No issue.
Okay, so then we'll move on to our third discussant, which is
Yes.
Dr. Rajesh. So I invite him to make his discussion points on the paper. Rajesh, you might like to unmute yourself. Welcome.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can be heard now.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. First, let me congratulate both authors for this very excellent paper on climate change and productivity, very extensively documented, and I congratulate for publishing it in a very reputed journal. I'm not working on climate change as such, but reading the paper, I felt valuable insights on the issues that is there that affect the industrial productivity of emerging market economies over time. So one of the main conclusion of this paper is that a 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature is actually declining productivity for about 3%, which is substantially very high. Even in the paper, the other papers that are quoted in this literature, their range is around like less than 1%. So this is like major finding. If it is like his robustness is accepted, then it's indeed a very alarming situation that we have to see. So apart from that, the methodologically, they have used very robust techniques, and the functionality, not only the linear parameter estimation, but also they have considered the non-linear impact of temperature on productivity, which is, I find, very interesting. And this itself shows that there are more nuanced understanding of how the temperature affects total factor productivity, because there may be some threshold effects from where the impact might strengthen or weaken over time. So understanding the threshold effect is important for say for targeted policy intervention. So that's what I find it very interesting. And also, this paper have mentioned certain channels through which temperature affects productivity. Basically, the ecological system that the earlier discussants were saying, and also the labor productivity and capital productivity. But I was also thinking about different direct and indirect way through which climate change and the proxy that you have used, the temperature affects productivity. For instance, if you see the climate change, like extreme weather conditions, the floods and drought and it's like that, that can disrupt the supply channels, supply chains, and that can damage the infrastructure and all, and that can decrease the there can be a decline in the labor productivity. This can be one channels. And increasing temperature will often leads to higher energy consumption, and that will reduce the workers' labor's comfort and all, and then it will reduce the productivity. And this can increase temperature also can lead to damage in the machinery, the equipments that the production they use. So that also can dampen the productivity effect. And also the precipitation pattern affect the agricultural productivity, which also retard the availability of supply of quality raw material, that also affect the users of this materials in the manufacturing sector. So overall productivity can decline. So these aspects, the direct aspects of how the climate change affect the productivity can be which can be included in the further work that the authors may wish to take. And also there can be certain vulnerabilities associated with climate change, like it can dampen the vulnerability that already there in the economy, like there may be scarcity, like water scarcity or food insecurity and all. So this can further increase because of the higher climatic change. So that also can then affect the total factor productivity. And also in a more macro level, like the social disruption, conflicts and all, this can also further dampen the productivity. So these direct as well as indirect effects of how climate change affect the productivity can be one issue that one can improve, one can mention in this work. So another aspect is regarding the type of innovation. So when we have the climate change impacts on the productivity, naturally there is an incentive for the firms to invest more in the technology to how to mitigate this kind of things. So, but there is also a chance that there is a higher level of uncertainty and risk associated with this kind of system. So there are two different types of channels that is working there. So it is very complex to imagine like what will be the net effect, whether the right amount of technological innovations will happen. So in that case, there is a role of the state to intervene and have the necessary investment in improving the overall innovation system in the country. And also the climate change itself calls for a more collaborative efforts not only within the country but also the internationally, so that it can say, for example, financial assistance can be done, and technological sharing can also be captured. So these are some of my comments, and then regarding the model, I would like the authors, they can also consider one recent paper by Cho et al. It appeared in Journal of Economic Survey, which talks about recent developments of the auto-regressive distributed lag modeling framework, which is extensively used in this paper. So there they have basically they have surveyed the existing studies on ARDL, and also they have very interesting literature on non-linear ARDL model, that is NARDL model, which the author can again take into account. So basically these are my comments, and also since the study focused on temperature on productivity, we also should note that industry itself are basically considered to be highly a major source of pollution. Like manufacturing industries are, there are studies which shows that because the industries use the fossil fuel apart from other sectors in the economy, manufacturing is the main source of using more fossil fuel and creating electricity and all. So the green gas emission that the industries provides is a major source of pollution for the economy. So that way also there is a endogenous issue is there, and so these kind of issues shows that the relationship between climate change and the technological advancement in the manufacturing may not be very simple. It's a complex relationship, and also in order to model this complex relationship, it is very interesting, very essential to understand the nuanced way in which the temperature or other forms of climate change affect the individual industrial sectors. Different sectors have different responsive system towards mitigating the rise in temperature. So these are all my comments, and I congratulate the authors for their very exhaustive study, and thank you.
Professor Maitri, you might like to respond to the discussion.
I think I should also give chance to Naveen, who has joined, and he has done the derivation and others. He could also return. Before that, I need to respond one or two issues. Now, so I forgot to also talk about the indigenous issues raised by the previous discussions. So when you are discussing the model conceptually, we need to theoretically first establish that, let's say 20 countries together produces something, they may together emit it, and emission play some kind of negative externality multiplier effect on the temperature. That endogeneity has been established. Now, when you're looking at the real life data, then we need to really prove whether the endogeneity exists or not. And that's also has been done here. Granger causality, panel Granger causality has been done. We found weak exogenality. Weak endogeneity has been found here. Now, weak because some of you said that these emerging economy might be capturing 30 to 40% of overall GDP. So they are not all, they are contributing the rest. That's also the reason why it is reasonable. So, but theoretical, when I'm saying the world only considers the developing economy, I need to bring this endogeneity concept theoretically. So that's the reason why you have to brought that. Now, ecology, of course, there could be better, if we get better data to capture the ecology, we'll definitely do that. There is no doubt about that. I'm not doubting that the ecology version, this is not my area. I mean, ecology is definitely interesting.
No, sir. Actually, this is a very, welcoming kind of research. You are putting some kind of innovation. So that's the reason, because the research already they have laws of biodiversity, economic loss of biodiversity, or economic loss of ecosystem services, which Professor Anil Markandayan he published in 2003 and 4 in Environment Journal of Environment Resource Economics. After that, actually, India we don't have such kind of studies. I mean, this is actually very welcoming. How climate change, I mean, weather-related events, not in the climate change, because of weather-related events like such of temperature, how impact on the labor productivity, especially for the total factor productivity, is very important for the policy decision, which we are looking because of more than 80% of economy based on the fossil fuel economy in our country. That's why the reason actually we actually planned for 2070 for zero carbon economy. So this kind of innovation is very required. I mean, it's very sure. Yeah.
No. Of course, no. Thank you for that. Of course, this is definitely needed. Beta proxy is definitely needed, and to see their micro impact of each of those components definitely
Yes.
needed.
Yeah.
But we thought let's start with one simple estimate that is available with us. We
Yes.
did that. This is one. Now, but how ecology and the temperature through carbon emissions are being connected. There are scientists who are also talking about these issues. One such literature talked about the zoonotic transformation. What does it tell? Let's say, I mean, basically, in this kind of economy, let's say the farm is interested to put the prices based on the marginal cost. Now, when they calculate the marginal cost, they emit something that also created some kind of cost not been included anywhere, neither the consumer nor producer. That's the reason why the social carbon cost they're trying to estimate. I mean, in the literature, then we did not go into that, but the social carbon cost is actually rising. That is also one reason, one way to show that the negative effect of the climate change. Now, when we also study, so the zoonotic transformation is also telling that, let's say, viral infection, let's say how ecology can actually now, because the temperature rises, let's say your agricultural productivity is going down, you are going deeper to the forest, and you are connecting closer to the wild animal. So when you are coming closer to the wild animal, because they also carry some virus, and that mutation can actually produce kind of virus which is much more dangerous than the let's say domestic animals that are attached to us. So these are the studies are also being done in the literature. I have popular paper I published in the Science Journal, and if you are interested, I could also share that. I haven't really talked about this anyway. But you are absolutely right. How the micro issues coming through the impact of these production channels making impact are definitely has to be understood better way and required. But since this is a study to understand what is happening, let's say we are talking about so much policy and this, whether really making an impact on that, and if not, then what could be the the loss. We wanted to show the bigger picture of that. So that's I mean, you can say that we try to scare the people that you say if you don't do anything, you have to accept this kind of damage. This is, to be honest. So it is prime duty to actually take that. Now, other kind of issues, Rajesh also talked about that. These are the supply channel effect, price effect is there. But theoretically, when you actually done the model, these are already there in the systems. Like, so let's say wage based on coming here from the marginal productivity. Your marginal productivity comes with your labor capital productivity and other things. If this is damaged, your wage is also be damaged. If wage is lower, your price is also lower. They are already there in the systems. So this is, and the technology adoption is also part of your production function. A captures basically the technology. Whatever technology you do, it is supposed to be reflected on the residue. This is how, let's say, macroeconomists view. But if you want to see definitely heterogeneous impact of accuracy, you need to definitely look at the industry effect. Definitely. I mean, this is important also to see that heterogeneous impact. But we wanted to actually get the macro impact. That's the reason why. And the Chow et al., I know this is definitely the major references. We have cited also the paper as you mentioned. non-linear ARDL model has also been run here. We did not actually show those results because of time. I think if you have time, Naveen, are you there? If you want to say something on the methodology, maybe 1 or 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor, for all the comments. Am I audible?
Yes, you're out.
Yeah. So about the paper, I'm really sorry for the noise behind me, but I'll try to speak as much as I can. So about the paper was built on the insight that, let's say, greenhouse gas emission is rising, and that is leading to temperature rise, and this temperature rise impacts several macro indicators. So they are channel. We are not going into this channel. GHG to temperature rise. We are seeing temperature to different macroeconomic indicators. So we are in this particular channel. About adaptation, that you raised the question. For adaptation, what we claim that our projection is based on the result that we see now. If this kind of environment persists later also, whatever type of adaptation we have, and this kind of adaptation is later also, there is no any adaptation, then this might be the impact. Also, for this, we also saw that if economies are adapting or not. For that, we use an ad hoc approach. We saw that, let's say that over the years, if coefficients are shrinking or not, and we do not find that much adaptation. Then coming to forest cover, given that this is a macro study, so getting a very good proxy for ecological services. So in paper, we talk about ecosystem services particularly. We don't have that good proxy. So what I did, we first use forest cover as a proxy and saw there is negative impact. Then to substantiate that, we also use natural resource strength, and we saw that, yeah, here also there is increase in natural resource strength with increase in temperature to substantiate that. Okay, and about the model, I'll say this model is just a mini version of what we see as a DICE and RICE model in orders. So this is not actually, we are not running a CG, but we are trying to motivate that we have 3 particular channels that impact TFP through temperature. Yeah.
Okay, so done. Hand over to Anjali.
Okay, thank you so much. I would now like to open the floor for any queries from participants. They may speak in, raise their hand, but actually I see there is none. We can wait for a moment. If somebody wants a question, I'll check the chat box in the meantime. No. So, sir, do you have any closing statements to make, or you think you've?
See, I mean, definitely I need to thank everyone and also the discussion. Of course, this helped definitely help think through to more micro issues. And when started also thinking this kind of thing, then we thought that maybe we are not thinking the right way, because we just already said the impact is quite big. I was thinking that to be honest, this would be
Yeah, that is 3% or something. So
no, but the literature talked about 1.47 something like that. Something. This is also bad. But see, there
and
is
did you see by country wise also what is the average effect across countries?
No. See that we have shown in different scenarios, but in this kind of model, it is difficult to identify actual country effect. But we tried to show in different climatic zone. That's what we got different type of content. So, but there are other ways to do that, but we don't want to do it because we thought that country group of together has some kind of cross-sectional dependence that has to be handled when you're trying to show the effect macroeconomic, right? Anyway, this is but of course Now we have to definitely do something. And the other thing some of you raise, what should be the best way to actually address these issues? These are definitely $1 million questions. But in one paper we cannot address that. But I mean, our simply attempt was to scare you and to do something. Otherwise, we are going to die.
And you've managed to do it pretty well. So. You brought it out in the public domain, actually. So that is a contribution. So with that, I would like to thank both the presenters of their paper, all the three discussants, and the participants for joining us and having a wonderful learning session today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.